This is called a learning video because I'm learning. You might know, but I don't. I've been making sourdough bread videos, I don't know, a couple months now. I was given a starter and I haven't been able to make bread right. Not only that, I'm still ignorant about sourdough and how to make it. And ignorant means I just don't know. I had made a video a while back about people getting into it. When you start making it, I like to learn and be educated. So I went online, and when I went online, I found out that sourdough bread making is very hard. Although it's supposed to be simple because it's just bread, it's just flour, water, and salt. But for me and in my journey, it's been driving me nuts because I'm on my 4th bag of flour and I haven't gotten it right. One of my sisters, my older sisters, gave me a starter because when you make sourdough bread, you need a starter. And I killed it. I didn't kill it, but I wasted it because the bread that I made all came out like garbage. I put too much water in it, which meant it was overhydrated. The starter wasn't quite ready, which has to do with fermentation, and bulk fermentation is what you do after you add the starter to your flour. So anyways, I was able to revive the starter. I'm going to get it from the fridge. And I went online, and basically you have to add flour and water, but you change the ratio. Now this, I took some out this morning, and it was very airy and bubbly and looked like the starters you see online where they have all kinds of bubbles. Check it out. See all those bubbles? These are my other starters that I have that I made versus the one that I got. And you have to feed them. They tell you to think of your starter as a kid. You got to feed kids every day, right? You can't just not feed them. I mean, you can, but people won't like that. Anyways, I took one of my starters and I made bread dough. And right now that bread dough is resting. But I think when I made it, I put too much water in it. But here it is right now. It's bread. How you doing? It's just sourdough bread. I like sourdough bread, and I'm trying to make it. I want to learn how to make it. I like to make everything myself. Okay, so anyways, I'm going to put this back in the fridge. I'm going to make another starter because they tell you all the time when you make a starter, you have to feed it. But when you feed it, this is what's crazy. When you feed it, you have to discard or throw away some of the starter that you have in your container, your jar, or whatever you put it in. Sorry, my nose itches. And the reason why is because when you feed it, right, every day you put it in here, it's going to get bigger and bigger as it grows. I told a friend of mine this morning, it's like a kid. If you have a kid when they're a baby, they have baby clothes, right? But as the baby grows, they get too big. They get too big for everything. Their shoes, pants, shirt, whatever. So you got to buy them new clothes. It's the same principle and theory with your starter. So I showed you guys my starter, and then now I'm making a new starter, a brand new starter. So what I did was I took some of the starter out. I took 35 grams of the starter out. I put it in this container. I used a scale, weighed it, right? So I had 35 grams of starter. Then I took 35 grams of water. Now I'm going to take 35 grams of flour. So turn my scale on. I can show you guys. I'm going to turn this down so you can see. Can you see it? It's right here. So I got a scale. It's zeroed out. Now I added the starter and the water. Now I'm going to add the flour. 35 grams. So this, when you feed your starter, they have what's called ratios, so a rate of how much you feed it. Most people feed their starters the same amount of flour and water as the starter. So it's called a 1:1:1 ratio. Very confusing, believe me, it is, because I'm not the smartest guy in the world, and I just got an epiphany this morning about it. So I wrote down the weight of the jar, so I know exactly how much the jar weighs. I wrote down how much starter that I put in. Then I add the same amount of water and flour. So now I'm going to add my flour, 35 grams. Once you have your flour in there, there we go. Now we're going to mix it. So all you do, you mix it. Excuse me. And they tell you when you mix it to be very firm or vigorous with it. I've got a little spatula. So you definitely want to get all of the flour in there when you mix it, like anything else, so you don't have little patches. Looks like I got it all. Looks mixed pretty good, huh? What do you think? This is from an established starter, because when you make your own starter, oh my gosh, you make your own starter, you have to wait up to 2 weeks or even a month for it to get started. So you feed it and discard it every day. And the reason why you discard, like I said earlier, so you don't have a big gigantic container of your starter. You really, all you need is a tiny bit of starter. And the reason why all you need is a tiny bit is because another part of the sourdough baking process and education that I've learned, that I had an epiphany with this morning, is what's called a levain or levain. It's basically French for leaven, and leaven is like yeast, right? Because sourdough bread makes its own yeast. It's natural, so you don't have to buy yeast from the store, whether it's regular yeast or quick acting yeast. So this is it. I made that starter right there. Now I'm going to cover it, let it rest. So the thing about it, remember, this is a kid, right? What do? You have to watch a kid. You got to babysit this thing now. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a lid on it and let it rest, or what they call ferment. That's what it's called. That's the term. And that's another thing. I just was talking to my sister about that this morning, is me, myself, I like those things. I like terms. I've always, I guess, been like that. So all I'm going to do is let this rest. They say for 4 hours or 8 hours. It all depends. But when this, after you make it, put a rubber band on it. So I got some rubber bands on let me clean my hands real quick. Okay, so take a rubber band. You guys can see. The jar is on loosely, not super tight, because this thing is growing and it's going to have gases and bacteria, so it's going to bubble, right? So you want it to rise, and when it rises, you want it to rise at least double, so double in size. Once it rises, doubles, or even gets bigger, that's when it's ready to use. And that term, believe it or not, is called peak, right? Because this thing is going to rise up, then it's going to fall back down because it's hungry. When it runs out of food, right, it's going to grow. When it runs out of food, it's going to be stunted, right? It's going to go back down. I just thought of stunted right now because a lot of times we can do the same thing by eating bad food. So this starter is marked. Now all I'm going to do is sit down and wait. I'm going to make another one out of another starter that I have that's ready. And you can take all of your starter, your old starter that you have and it's made. That's called your discard. And you can you can use it to make other stuff. I'm going to use this one right here because you see how big it is, how much it's grown. So the first thing that I'm going to do, clean up my tools here. I got a spatula and a spoon. I'm going to put this on the scale and I'm going to weigh it. You want to weigh everything. That's the thing about baking and sourdough. It's pretty precise, but it's also an art and a science. Let me clean my utensils real quick. Okay, so this jar right here, this tomato jar that I have, it's pretty easy for me to remember because it still has the outside on it. Chosen mayo. I weighed this jar. It weighs 225 grams. All right, so write that down, whether you put it in your phone notes, or anywhere else. I'm going to do my chosen starter. Chosen jar. 225 grams. That's how much it weighs. Now you tare it. When you tare something, you reset the scale to 0. So now I can add my starter and make another one out of it. I'm going to do 35 grams. And I'm going to also add 35 grams of flour and 35 grams of water. Because remember that ratio, 1 to 1 to 1 ratio, okay? So, first things first, I'm going to take out 35 grams of this. See how it is? Look inside there, that webbing, how it looks kind of like a web, those bubbles. This stuff is alive, right? You see that? And that's what you want to get. You want to get that part that's all webbed. It looks like a spider's web, right? So I'm going to put it in here. You can let your finger, it slides off easier. That I have in right there is 17 grams. Let's get some more. Now this is going to be my discard, this other jar. So I have a couple jars of discard. 18. I want 35 grams. Pretty gooey, right? Okay, there it is, 35 grams. So that's my starter. Now I'm going to add 35 grams of water. I've got my water right here. 35 and 35, 70, so it's pretty simple math. Although you can always zero out the scale and add the amount. In this case I'm not, so I want 70 on here. There it is, 70. Now I'm going to stir this up before I add the flour. So, mixing it. I had heard that when you do this, right, when you add the starter and the water and you mix it, that's the same thing you do when you make your bread, before you make your bread. You only need a little bit of starter. All you have to do is feed it whenever you use it, which is pretty cool. So you don't need to have a big, gigantic, although I see people that have big old jars of starter, see people with little, tiny jars. My sister gave me a jar and, I don't know, probably had maybe 100 or 125 grams of starter. Because the thing about sourdough, when you make the bread, you have your starter that you add, right? But with the starter, then you have to make what's called a levain. And a levain is activated starter. They have a term called an autolyse. Autolyse is when you take flour and water and you mix it, then you let it raise up or ferment a little bit. Then you add the starter to it. And you wait for it to ferment. And that process afterwards of the dough fermenting is called bulk fermentation. Okay, so I'm going to zero it out. Now it's zero. Now I'm going to add 35 grams of flour and do the same thing. So all right, so now I have my flour in there, right? Everything's 1 to 1 to 1. 35 grams of starter, 35 grams of flour, 35 grams of water. Not in that order necessarily. So you mix this up really good. They tell you the consistency is going to be similar to a pancake batter, kind of, but maybe a little thicker. And that's about right. So you look at it. Make sure you mix it all up. You don't have any dry spots in there. Flour has a way of finding a dry spot and sticking all by itself, and you miss it. Excuse me. Well, it looks pretty good. Mix it all up. Zero out that scale, get it out of the way. Now I have 2 starters, right? I got one right here that I just made. I'm actually going to make 3. So what you do after all of that is mixed up, you cover it lightly, not completely. You don't want to seal it. Just cover it lightly so you can put a lid on and not close it, basically. Where's my lid? My lid is right here. It's a little harder to see where this is because I guess that's another thing, guys. You should take the label off so you can see where you're at. I'll try to do that. There you go. Now at least we can see it. You can see where it's at. But I'll show you what I do next, guys. Next thing you do is you take a spatula, push all of that down. Push it all down to the bottom. Try to get it as level as you can. Now remember, this is a starter, not a brand new starter, an established starter. So I'm making these starters so that I can make some bread later, because your starter has to be ready. Once your starter is ready and at its peak of activation, that's when you bake your bread. I'm going to put a lid on it. Got a rubber band right here, and I'm going to put a rubber band on. Basically put that rubber band on there. Know exactly where it is. And you want this starter to double, at least double in size. And when it rises, at least doubles, that's when you're ready to make your bread. You can actually put this starter in water, mix it up, then you add your flour and salt, because that's all sourdough bread is. You just have to, you gotta wait, man. Unless you want to buy it from the grocery store, you cannot make sourdough bread in 15 minutes like you would regular bread. Because the thing about sourdough is it makes its own yeast. It becomes its own yeast. That's why that other term I gave you guys earlier, leaven, that's the leaven for your bread you make. So I have another jar. We'll do it all over again. Another jar. I'm going to zero it out. Now remember, you weigh your container. I've got a jar right here that I used before. Mason jar, right? Weigh it. 242 grams. Okay, so mason jar. You want to write all that down so you don't forget. Okay, I've written down my 2 different jars. Now it's my 3rd jar I'm going to use. Mason jar, all right? I have, let's take this off, put it back on. 242 grams. Now you can make a bigger starter or a smaller starter. And since my starter that I had, which is called the mother, you call them a mother, right? The one that you use all the time. This one's got some nice big bubbles in there. You see that? Not on the bottom, but the side. Once again, I'm going to go inside there, look for that webbing part, that really nice looking spider web. I don't know if you can see it in there. Can you guys see it? See that? Inside there? That's what I want to put in there. So I zero this out. 35 grams. I'm going to do a bigger one for this. I'm going to do 50 grams. All right? Starter. And write everything down. That way you don't forget. It's hard to remember all of these things. So I'm going to add 50 grams. That means on a 1-1-1 ratio, I'm going to do 1-2-2. So I'm going to put 100 grams of flour and 100 grams of water. So I'm going to double it. So it's 1-2-2 versus 1-1-1. And because I'm starting to experiment, since I finally have a good starter, all right? So 100. This is a little messy, a little gooey. You'll find that out when you start making this stuff. It's not easy, man. It's pretty tough to do. At least it has been for me. It hasn't been an easy journey learning about this stuff. Now remember, I'm going to do 50 grams, all right? 1-2-2. Right now I got 30 grams in there. somebody, I made a video last night, someone commented that I had a normal looking house. I thought, hey, that's nice to know, because a lot of these content creators, seems like they got a lot of money because their houses are really nice, their kitchens are really nice. You're like, man, all that space in the kitchen, I wish I had that. Okay, this hasn't gone in yet, but I'm shooting for 50 grams, right? Almost there. That's like 47. Okay, this ought to be enough right here. 48. Yeah, more than enough. 50. We're good. Now what's left in here that's in this jar, this is going to be what's called a discard, because when you feed these every day, you got to get rid of some too, so that you don't use a ton of flour, right? So now I'm going to put 50 grams of flour and 50 grams of water. Water. All right. Now I'm going to put my flour in there. I'm running out of spoons here. Oh no, wait. I'm going to use 100. I forgot, guys. I got to put more water in there. 100. So it's going to be 150. More water. That's why it's good to keep your numbers. Now this is going to be a larger starter, so you can make bigger loaves of bread or more loaves of bread if you want, whatever you want. Okay? There we go. Now flour. 100 grams of flour. Zero it out. Okay. Here's my flour jar. I use King Arthur all-purpose bread flour, 12.7%. They tell you to use some people use a really uber expensive flour. They mill it themselves. I just buy it in the store. This is the start of my sourdough journey, so I'm starting out. And I want 100, right? Jar's kind of small, so you can't put a big giant spoonful of flour in there. Now a lot of people use a spoon when they mix theirs. I think I want to use a fork, because I think a fork will mix it better and it's easier to get off of the utensil after you're done using it. Spoon's a little tougher, you gotta scoop everything out. Okay, there's 100. Done. Now, I'm going to mix it. I find that also when using a jar, depending on the size, you want a longer handle, spoon or fork, whatever you use. Because when your hand is almost hitting the top of the jar, it makes it a little tougher. Okay, so we're just going to mix this. See that? So everything's weighed. Now they tell you that when you mix it, you got to really mix it very heartily, so to speak. Because when you do that, you get air in there. And what's in the air in our house, believe it or not? Bacteria. We live around germs, right? We're surrounded by germs. We cannot see them, that's all. It's bacteria. That's why it's good for us to go outside in the natural air and expose our body to these germs so that we can fight them. Not be like a lab rat and get injected with viruses that we really don't need. Or not viruses. What's that called, honey? Vaccines. Yeah, we don't need vaccines. Everybody is getting different things injected into their bodies to supposedly prepare them when we can do it naturally. I know that when I was a kid growing up, we could drink water from the garden hose or the water hose outside. Nowadays, if you own a home or you live anywhere, you probably get notices from the local water company that tells you how contaminated your water is. So everybody has some sort of water filtering system. And the water we got before that had natural minerals in it that were good for our body. But that's it. I have mixed this up very well. Now I'm going to let it rest or ferment. So you see that starter, which is going to be a levain, what I'm going to use to make bread, or yeast. That's your yeast. This sourdough makes its own yeast. So now what you do after you mix it up, see how that looks nice and thick? Now all you do is you push it down. Scrape the sides of the jar, push it down as far as you can. This is a bigger starter, so it's going to be taller. So now when it doubles, I do have enough room in here. Looks like barely. Probably should have made it a little smaller, but I did it. So that's it. So now what you do, put a lid on it, which I don't have. And if you don't have a lid, check it out. You can use napkin, paper towel. I've got a napkin right here I'm using. Cover it with a rubber band. Let's see, cut this in half. Cover it. Put a rubber band on it. Put a rubber band on the jar just to mark where you're at. And you want it to grow. Right? It can take a long time. It could take, normally they say 4 to 6 hours. It can take longer, 8 to 10. But because I fed this more food, maybe it'll rise faster. We'll see. So you mark it, right? I think I might need a bigger jar. Mark it like that to the top. Then you see how much it grows. Hey, Brandon, nice to see you on here. All right, that's it. Now I have another starter that I'm feeding and going to use later on. The rest of everything that I have, I'm going to call it a discard. I put it in the fridge. When you put it in the fridge, it stops the growth, right? So that's it, man. I wanted to make that. Hopefully it'll come out okay. This is the dough I made last night. I think it was too hydrated or too wet, which means I had too much water with the dough. So you got to do what you got to do. I'm still working on this. That's why this is called learning. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. See you soon. Bye.